Claude just dropped Claude Routines, and it's kind of amazing, but not completely yet, because now you can build automations in natural language, like literally plain English in Claude. But what that doesn't give you is the robustness and flexibility, as well as the cool graphical interface that comes with automation platforms like Make.com and Anyden. But I think it's just a matter of time before Claude adds that as well, because the team at Anthropic are inventing such cool stuff. Either way, in this video, we're going to talk about Claude routines, what they are, how do you set them up, and how do you build your first automation completely in natural language. And then we're going to look at a slightly more advanced case of how do you schedule these, but also how do you trigger these using API call. And the really cool part is, even if you don't know anything about Claude routines, Claude code, or how to build these yourself, we're literally going to tell Claude to walk us through step by step and teach us how to build our first routine, schedule it, as well as the API route, including building us a small front end application. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so first up, you can see I just have Claude open here. In the left menu, you'll see Claude Code in here. So if I click on Claude Code, it's going to open up in a new tab. In the left menu of Claude Code, you can see we have new sessions, routines, and customize. So I'm going to come into routines and I'm going to click on new routine. And if we come in here, you can see there's a name field. We can give it instructions as well as a trigger. So we can either schedule this, as I mentioned earlier. So there are two ways we're going to discuss. There are actually three, but a GitHub event is the most technical of all these if you are working with a code repository, which we're not going to be looking at in this example because it's not going to be required. We're just going to focus on how do you do that using a schedule trigger. So you schedule this automation to run once a week, for example, or once a day, and it will run automatically in the background without you having to manually trigger it. And the second example is going to be where we do manually trigger it using an API call, which, for example, is, say you had a button on your website and every time someone clicked that button, we wanted this automation to fire. That's when we would use the API event or the API trigger instead. So we're going to look at both of these examples. And again, you don't have to be technical. We're just going to get Claude to do all of this for us. So if I come in here, the first example I'm going to do is like a calendar and analyze my inbox kind of automation. So if I come into Claude and say, can you give me a name and instructions if I want to set up a Claude routine to check my inbox and calendar. That's about it. That's literally how simple it is, and we're just going to let Claude guide us through this entire process of creating our first routine. So it's thinking, and okay, so it's literally given me these entire routine instructions, and all we have to do is copy this across. We're going to come in here into the instructions, paste that in. You can name it whatever you want. We're just going to call it morning briefing and give it that name. So under the connectors option, when we come down here, we will see we can give it the name of morning briefing. Next up, we're going to select a trigger. So we're going to look at both. First, we're going to do a schedule, and then we're going to use the API trigger. So if I click into schedule, it will give us the option as to when do we want it to run. Do we want it to run just once, hourly, daily, weekdays, weekly, or some custom schedule? So currently, if I check, it is 23rd of May, 7:36 p.m. So I'm just going to set this to run at 7:40 p.m. so that it will run in about 4 minutes from now. And the connectors we require, so these are some that I had previously set up, but we don't need all of these. We just need to give it access to our Gmail and calendar. So all you've got to do is come in here, click on add connector. At the moment, it doesn't show us the option to add the connectors. So let's go to customize, and under connectors, here we can see we have Gmail and the Google Calendar option. So we're just going to click connect to Gmail. It's going to take us to the OAuth login screen. So I'm going to choose my Gmail account, click continue, and Gmail is now connected. And I'm also going to do the same for Google Calendar. I'm just going to hit connect. I'm going to choose which Gmail account to log in with, click continue again, and we now have our connectors set up. So if I go back to our Claude code where we were setting up the routines, it may not have been saved, so we may have to start that from scratch. Yeah, let's just quickly do that again. So we're going to call it morning briefing. We're going to set up our routine instructions. In this example, we're going to choose the schedule trigger because it is now 7:41 p.m. I'm just going to set this to 7:43 p.m. just so that we can see it in action. I'm going to remove all the connectors that are not Gmail and Google Calendar, and I'm just going to hit create and we will see what it gives us. So that's it. The routine is created. You can see it's 7:41. The routine or the automation is going to run in 2 minutes. I will show you the results as soon as we come back. Or I also have the option of manually running it now. If I wanted to do that, you can always edit these instructions by just clicking this edit icon, and you can change literally everything that we just did, from the name, the instructions, the trigger, and the connectors that we are using. So I'll come back in 2 minutes and show you the output that we get from this automation. Okay, I'm back and it is 7:44 p.m. and let's head into Claude to see if our automation has run. Yep, it's 7:44. Right on cue, you can see that our automation has run at 7:43. If we click this and look at what output we get, you can see that it's pulled up all of our inbox. So this is a make.com notification that some credits have expired, another one from make.com, some Google DMARC support report. This is just an automation that I have with myself wherein I try to log what I'm doing daily. So it's based on Homework for Life. If any of you have read Storyworthy by Matthew Dick's very nice book. Then this is another email from Myron, iPhone Photography School, Amazon AU, etc. So based on my calendar, I had a meeting today from 4:30 to 5:30 with one of my video editors. It shows the Google Meet, the Drive folder, and basically pulled up everything from my Google Calendar without me having to do literally anything. And that's how amazing these things are and how scarily good they're getting at. Like, if you just wanted a summary of your entire inbox or your calendar, earlier you would need a full assistant, or you would manually have to do it. Now you can just, with one prompt, which you don't even have to write yourself, Claude can give it to you. You can get an entire summary. So whether you wanted this done daily, you wanted it weekly, whatever cadence you needed on. So even if you wanted it to run at 9 a.m., you would just change the timing. And that's how stupidly simple these things have become. So that was our morning briefing automation that we built completely with natural language. We didn't need to write a single line of code. We just needed to connect our Gmail and Google Calendar, give Claude access to it, use the prompt that Claude gave us itself, and it gave us this amazing summary. So that was the first part of this video, getting the routine to run on a scheduled trigger. In the second part of this video, we're going to look at how do you call this automation using an API. And rather than making it boring and showing you the command line way of doing it, where you can copy a single command and just run it. I know most people don't like looking at a command line interface, but to skip the complexity, I'm going to try doing it using Claude itself to build a mini web application for us that has a single button that would then call the API for us. If you're a 9-to-5 employee and you currently feel overwhelmed with AI, on one hand, you're scared that it might take your job, but on the other hand, you're excited about the fact that it could help you work less and finally start something of your own, then I'd like to give you a free gift, which is this 100 AI scaling roadmap, which is based on 200 hours of me looking over all the businesses that I've helped implement AI and automations for across civil engineering, e-commerce, law firms. And so what I did was I broke this down into 10 stages that take you from complete beginner and someone who's never even used ChatGPT before to top 1%, where you know how to build any automation and any agent, whether that's for yourself, your company, or your business. And so I made this kind of quiz thing on the website. You can go to it at the100ai.com/roadmap. It's completely free. And if you put in your information there, it will tell you which stage you're at, what you're currently struggling with, and what you need to graduate to the next level. You can check out the link. It will be in the description. Okay, so in the second part of this video, we're going to look at how do we trigger this automation using an API call, and we're going to do that using a button that would be on our website, for example. So if I come into this same routine and just click edit, you can see that we have our first daily trigger set up. This is on a schedule, but now we're going to click on add another trigger, and we're going to add an API request to trigger this automation. So it gives us the URL and it gives us this generate token, and it says copy this token now, use it as the bearer credential. And what does that mean is, if you look at this example request, you can see one of the parameters here is this authorization bearer, and then there's this dollar token, which is basically going to use the token value. And this is a way of securing your APIs, and this is about like protecting your APIs so that they can't be hacked. And explained more simply, this is the website URL, like this is the API URL that we're going to be calling. Now, if we did not have some sort of protection for it, anyone across the world, if they just had access to this URL, would be able to trigger your automation. Now, if it was returning data that is sensitive, like all your inbox data and your calendar data, you don't want it to be unprotected, right? So you need some sort of security, and this is nothing but like thinking about it like a username password for this URL. Okay, so that's what the authorization and the token does. It just adds a level of robustness and security to your API calls. Once we have that in place and this example request, this is what we are going to do now to set it up with Claude itself. So I'm just going to come back into our Claude chat and say, I want to trigger this routine using an API call. This is my token. And ideally, you shouldn't paste your tokens in here directly. This is just for the sake of the demo. So that's why I'm going to do it. We're going to come in here. I'm going to click regenerate, just copy this token, paste it in here, click done, and copy this example request, mention that in the chat. This is what an example request should look like. Can you please give me a mini web app or HTML file that I can use that has a single button to trigger this routine? And we're just going to hit enter and see what it gives us. So basically what we've done is, now I think Claude's going to give us an HTML file, and basically what that's going to contain is a single button that we can use to call this API. And you can see that Claude itself tells us, just a heads up, please don't share your API token publicly like this. I've only done this for the sake of the demo, but usually what you would do is create the HTML file, or take the HTML file that Claude gives you. You would come in here, click regenerate, copy that token, paste it in the new HTML file, and then you'd be able to have a secure API key that isn't exposed to the internet. Okay, so as you can see, it's given us the HTML file. If I just click on it, let's see what that looks like. For some reason, it's not loading. Okay, now it's loaded, and it gives us this entire interface. It gives me API token, routine ID, and extra content. I'm not sure why it's given us all of that, but okay, let's just paste in our API token, which was the same one we had pasted in the chat here. So we're going to paste that in. We don't need to give it any extra context. It has the routine ID, and we're just going to click fire routine, and it's sending that off to Claude. It says API error, 400 messages field required. Please run this automation. Okay, so this was the HTML file Claude gave us. I'm not sure why it gave us the input fields for the token, the routine ID, and extra context. And on top of that, when I ran the fire routine or I clicked the button, I was getting an error. I'm just going to prompt Claude again and tell it I don't want to input the API token. I only want a single button with the example request to fire, and the API key I gave you is just for a demo. That is why I pasted it in here. Can you please update the file to include a single button only with all of the API request parameters, so that when I click it, my routine runs. And we will see what changes Claude makes to this file, and then we will come back and see the output. Okay, so we can see Claude has done updating the file. This is our updated HTML file, which just has a single button. I'm going to click fire routine, and it still says 400 messages field required. I'm going to paste this back into Claude and say I get this error, and can you help me fix it? And in the meantime, I'm just going to come to our routine and refresh this page and check if the routine has actually been firing. But no, it hasn't. It just has this one. So, okay, so Claude has figured out what was wrong, and it said that the text field is described as optional. The 400 is saying messages it is required. So it's updated the body to include a role and a content. And now if we fire this routine, it's running, and perfect. So we can see this output. It says routine fired. It gives us this entire JSON object with everything that's happened and our routine, and I hit refresh, we should see a new run in these logs. So if I come into schedule, manual, API, webhook. Okay, so for some reason this still isn't giving us the output we expect, and it's not showing the routine being triggered. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this entire request and I'm going to paste it in here. I am going to replace the token with what we had given Claude. So if I come back in here and just copy the entire token, and if I paste that in here and then hit enter, let's see what we get. And if I come back into Claude and check my routines and just hit refresh, yep, it's given me this JSON that looks like it's fired, and they're perfect. You can see our routine is running via API call, and it is 8:08, which is 20:08 p.m. Perfect. So it runs perfectly when we execute it from the command line. I'm not sure why Claude is struggling with this so much. So we're going to give it one last prompt and see if that works. Okay, so I'm back in Claude, and sometimes you just need to yell at your AIs like you would yell at an intern. So I'm going to tell it something like, I don't know why you're overcomplicating this. Please just build the most stupidly simple page with a single button that makes this API call. And I'm literally going to copy this from what we pasted in our command line. This works perfectly from my terminal without giving me any errors. Please update the code to call this API or to make this API request, and we will see what Claude gives us. So it seems to have gotten the memo and it is updating. If we come back into our routine and just refresh this to make sure that it is 8:11 p.m. now. The last one we triggered via API completed at 8:08. The previous one that was scheduled was at 7:43. And now if we check this, okay, it's removed all of the styling and stuff, and it has given us this ridiculously simple button. But we will click it and see if the routine fires, and we still get this error. I have no idea why Claude is just going nuts. So I'm gonna tell it again. I get this error. Can you not make a simple post request using an API call? Or was it a GET request that we were using? A simple post request using an API call triggered on a button click. Hopefully that works. We will give it a shot and see. So that didn't work either, and we get this notification or message from Claude saying the browser is blocking the request with a cause error. And the cause error is basically something in the web app development world that you kind of get when the request you're making, like in this case we're trying to make a post request, and the resource that we're trying to access, in this case the Claude routine via API call, it's kind of saying that we don't have the required permissions to do so. So, and then it goes on to say you can't call the Anthropic API directly from a browser page. It only works from a server terminal. And that's why it worked when we ran it from the terminal, but we haven't done the server out yet. So Claude suggests, and it's given us the fix for that. It's given us a tiny Node.js server and the HTML file to run it. So I'm just going to download both of these files, run the server, and then run our HTML file and try to call the routine via a button using that HTML file. Okay, so I've downloaded the index.html and server.js file that Claude gave us. Now I'm just going to come into our terminal, and you can see we are inside the Claude routines demo folder, which is the folder that I have these two files saved in. I'm just going to run node server.js, and you can see our servers running on HTTP localhost 3000. Now I'm just going to come back in here, open index.html file. You can see it's just a simple landing page with this big button. And now if I click fire routine, you can see it's firing, and it shows us this success message that the routine is fired at 5:52 p.m. You can see it's 5:52 p.m. And now if I come into Claude Code and go to my routines, you can see that under a morning briefing routine that it was fired at 5:52. Okay, so now that you can see our routine has finished running, if I just open this, I had run a couple of moments ago, you can see it gives us a complete summary of our inbox, of our calendar, and our total priority stack for today and what we need to do. So that was it for this video. You saw how we can use Claude routines in 3 ways: using a schedule trigger from the Claude Code interface, using the API call from the command line, or building a simple index.html page with a server.js that Claude gave us to run like a mini web application and server, using a button to call the routine itself using an API.